So, ladies and gentlemen, as we resume, we will be going into the session 2 of presentations. Session 2 of presentations. And this presentation focusing on this round of presentations, rather, focusing on Nigeria's ambitious policy targets related to mangroves. And this session explores the current policy frameworks at the federal and state levels, as well as opportunities for enhancements. This session is titled Towards Comprehensive Mangrove Protection Policies. We'll be having 4 presenters, 4 speakers for this session. 3 of them physically here with us, and 1 will be joining us online. I think already online, will be presenting virtually. Permit me to present them to you, the presenters, I mean. We'll be having first on the list, Dr. Wakade Davidson, Director Climate Change, Bayelsa State, all the way from Bayelsa State. Ministry of Environment, yes. And then thereafter, we would have the Director General, Nigeria Conservation Foundation, Dr. Joseph Onoja. And after him would be Christabel Okonji, Chief Scientific Officer, Natural Resource Management Division of the Environmental Management Department of Ministry of Niger Delta. And thereafter, to wrap it up, would be joining us virtually from the Department of Zoology, University of Cambridge, Global Mangrove Alliance, Dr. Thomas Worthington. So right now, we would have the first on the list, Dr. Wakade Davidson, Director, Climate Change, Bayelsa State, Ministry of Environment. Apologies for the wrong pronunciation, if there's any.
I appreciate the USAID and the SDN for organizing this program. I'm presenting on current status and future prospects of mangroves in Bayelsa State. Of course, that's the background about the creation of Bayelsa State, being on the 1st of October 1995. Our terrain is known flat, low-lying, with most parts below sea level, and with an intricate network of rivers and rivulets, creeks, and creeklets, and of course slopes gently towards the Atlantic Ocean in the south. And our population as of 2006, the census figures showed 1.85 million people. Current estimates are above 2 million with growth rate of 3%. Our land area covers 2,110 square kilometers and the terrain is about 60% water and 40% land, and over 700 communities, about a third of which are at the coastline. We have 8 local government areas and over 24 administration centers. Our ecological zones are 4. We have coastal barrier islands, and of course we have the largest in Bayelsa State, which form a rich, complex endowment of biodiversity, both aquatic and terrestrial. We have the mangrove forests, which is the largest and richest in Nigeria, providing a wide spectrum of ecological services. We also have the freshwater swamp forest, and we also have the lowland rainforest. Yes, our economic activities, crop farming, fishing at artisanal level, trading, marine transportation, lumbering, sand mining, carpentry, canoe carving, palm oil production, brewing of local gin. So our terrain, Bayelsa State, is characterized by a predominantly flat and low-lying topography, lacking elevated grounds that could serve as refuge during climate-related events such as floods. I mean, when such impacts occur, there is hardly somewhere anybody can run to. And we also have the ubiquitous presence of water. Our environmental challenges. Bayelsa State is characterized by a riverine and estuarine environment with numerous rivers, creeks, and mangrove forests. And the state faces several environmental challenges such as flooding, oil spills, deforestation, with the longest coastline, 203 kilometers, out of which 853 kilometers, out of the 853 kilometers long Nigerian coastline and 450 long Niger Delta coastline. The state is vulnerable to sea level rise, ocean surges, and coastal erosion. The slide over there is one of the coastal barrier islands that was washed off that exposed one of the communities, Kolama 2 community, exposed the community to ocean action. We also have serious deforestation going on, and forest depletion in Bayelsa State is known to be very rapid. By the estimates of the Forestry Department, Bayelsa State Ministry of Environment, as of 2000, as much as 636.6 square kilometers of forest were to be lost by 2010 at 3.5% per annum forest recession. This implies that 2020 total forest loss would be 1,273. I don't know how the actual estimates stand now. The major causes are lumbering activities, development of urban centers, oil spills, acquisition of right-of-ways from oil companies and oil and gas operations, and of course, agricultural activities. The diversity and abundance of aquatic terrestrial species are declining due to excessive exploitation, pollution from oil and gas industry activities, and agriculture. As a result, some faunal species that were common 30 to 40 years ago are now threatened, and some have already gone into extinction, like the pygmy hippopotamus, manatees, and pangolins, and gray parrots. They've all gone, quite scarce now. And profoundly, oil spills have remained the significant cause of degradation in the mangrove ecosystem. You can see this is the celebrated Santa Barbara spill that really devastated our ecosystem. So Bayelsa State is home to significant portion of Nigeria's mangrove forests, which are part of the larger Niger Delta mangrove ecosystem. This region contains the largest mangrove forest, and in Africa, the third in the world. However, these mangrove forests in Bayelsa have been experiencing degradation due to various factors already mentioned. The dominant mangrove species in Bayelsa include the red mangrove, the black mangrove, and also the white mangrove. And between 1996 and 2016, Bayelsa State lost approximately 8,274 hectares of mangrove forest at an annual rate of 413.7 hectares. This loss is attributed to deforestation, oil spills, and other environmental pressures. Ecological importance. Coastal protection. Mangroves act as natural barriers against coastal erosion and storm surges, protecting inland areas from flooding and damage. And as for biodiversity, they provide critical habitats for a wide range of marine and terrestrial species, including fish, birds, and invertebrates. Mangroves are highly effective at sequestering carbon, helping to mitigate climate change by absorbing and storing large amounts of carbon dioxide. Mangroves support local fisheries by providing breeding and nursery grounds for many fish species, which are vital for the livelihoods of coastal communities. Again, many communities members rely on mangroves for resources such as firewood, timber, and traditional medicines. Cultural significance. Mangroves hold cultural and traditional importance for local communities, often being integral to their way of life and heritage. What are the state government's initiatives and policy direction? Because of the problem of pollution, the state government established in March 2019 the Bayelsa State Oil and Environment Commission, which aimed to address the environmental impacts of oil exploration and production in Bayelsa State. And this commission was chaired by the former Archbishop of York, the Right Reverend and Right Honorable the Lord Sentamu, and includes an international panel of experts. This commission focused on assessing the extent of environmental damage, recommending remediation strategies, and ensuring accountability from oil companies. Also, the state government has initiated a few mangrove restoration projects to rehabilitate degraded mangrove forests. And these projects involve replanting mangrove seedlings and engaging local communities in conservation efforts. Also, we engage communities and then collaborate with NGOs. And this is one of the projects we did at some of, I think, in the Ogbea axis, where we collaborated with some NGOs to carry out mangrove replantation. The government collaborates with local communities to raise awareness about the importance of mangroves and the need for their conservation. And policy direction. We have, the state government has prepared a new bill for environmental regulation. It is called the Bayelsa State Environmental Protection and Management. It's going to be the Bayelsa State Environmental Protection and Management Law. A second similar one is the Bayelsa State Forestry Bill. That one too is new. It's supposed to repeal every other existing law concerning forest governance in the state. And the third one is the Bayelsa State Environmental Vanguard Scheme. It's just a proposal. It's right now with the State House of Assembly. It is supposed to have some kind of participatory governance from the people, where people can, do whistleblowing with respect to any form of environmental degradation in the state. So the Bayelsa State Jurisdictional Red Cross Program is a program that we have envisaged to partner with a US firm to scale up forest governance and enhancement of our forest activities. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll have next Dr. Joseph Onoja to please come and make his presentation.
So good morning, everyone. I'm Joseph Onoja, and I'm from NCF. So in working with communities, that is where our emphasis lies. We have the federal laws, we have the state laws, but how well does this law go down to the community? That is where the big question is. And working with these communities, and that's where we found the gap as Nigerian Conservation Foundation, so that we try to work with this community to see how they themselves, they can formulate policies within themselves and bylaws that will be able to help in the conservation of mangrove ecosystem. Because it pinches them much more and they understand the local context more than whoever is going to bring up those laws. And once they are able to cash into that, it helps them to own it and run with the process. And the way we do it is we try to make it in such a way that it's not just, when we talk about mangrove standing on its own may not necessarily be what they want to see, because it's all interwoven. For instance, you go to a local community and you tell a local fisherman not to smoke his fish after he has come back. And sometimes they won't provide alternatives. And then they will tell you, for instance, one of the projects that we did in Akasa in Bayelsa State provided like a solar panel, solar heating, drying unit for them. They will say that the taste of the fish, the aroma that comes from the mangrove is lost when you use any other thing from roasting or from drying the fish. So how will you overcome that? You may have all the beautiful policies at the federal and at the state level, but if the local communities are not involved, they are not carried along and won over, and have their own indigenous rules and regulations that they are able to live by, it becomes a very difficult thing for them to do. And we tie that very closely with other conservation issues. For instance, the Akasa, as an example that I'm giving, is also one of the sites that we use for annual waterbed count, the migratory birds that come from global north and winter in our habitats. We tie that very closely. And what about the sea turtles as well? Because they also harvest. We have about 5 species of sea turtles beaching on our lands, on our beaches, and laying eggs. And these eggs are also harvested. And you also show the importance of why that is being done. Because it is said that if the use of something is not known, abuse is inevitable. And because they are the local actors, they are the ones who are being affected, that this conversation has to show. And that is why I like what the director said about participatory approach. But even at that participatory approach is still at the state level. At the local level is where the action should take place. And that is where whatever intervention we want to do, driving local policies at the local level, at the community level, is very important. We've been able to work very closely with them. The Akasa community, they now have a bylaw, and they have people who have been empowered to be able to enforce that bylaw by the community. And it's easy to be able to have that community fabric to ensure that that is done. So here we're talking about policies that will be able to help us to conserve mangrove. And that is why I just want to throw that in for us to start thinking towards that direction. I'm sure a lot of thoughts are going in there, but we more consciously doing that. Because as I said, we may have policies at the national level, at the sub-national level, but what about at the local community? And that is where I want emphasis to be, so that we'll be able to push this forward. Because as I said, they are the users, they are the harvesters, they are the ones that are immediately affected by the consequence of cutting down the mangroves and destroying the mangrove ecosystem, because the mangrove ecosystem is meant to protect them. The director talked about an island that was wiped off because of such degradation of the mangrove. So such examples will show them that this is for their good. And together we'll be able to build more and more community bylaws and community policies that will be able to help protect our mangrove. I think I'll stop here till we have further discussion. Thank you very much.
So we have a new record, 5 minutes delivery. I hope we're able to keep to this. All right, so we'll invite now from the Ministry of Niger Delta, Christabel Okonji. Kindly come forward and make your presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm here to talk about the existing environmental policies on the Niger Development Ministry that's actually is inclusive of the mangrove forest. So the Ministry of Niger Delta normally has a mandate. It's why it was set up in the first place is because of the environmental degradation in the Niger Delta. And it has this vision to serve as a primary vehicle for the execution of government plans and programs and all that. It's more or less is a standing policy. The Niger Delta as a ministry as a whole is a policy. If you combine the vision and the mission with the mandate, it extrapolates to a policy. So that's what it is. So, but with environmental sustainability as a core mandate, a department of course had to be created for it. And that's why we have the Environmental Management Department under the Ministry of Niger Delta with the following divisions over there. So with all those divisions, the EPA, the flood erosion control, the natural resource management, the pollution control, and shoreline protection, all that together, we strive to focus on the degradation of the environment in the Niger Delta region. Now, the natural resource management as a division is primarily concerned with everything concerning the core environment, core of the environment, the forest ecosystem restoration and development, the coastal and mangrove restoration, the biodiversity conservation and management, wetland resources utilization and management, and resource utilization and climate change. This falls under the natural resource management jurisdiction. So we have to now differentiate our policies and our policy framework. We as MNDD, we are standing policies already. So what do we do to achieve that environmental sustainability is to extrapolate those policies to policy frameworks. We have to create the policy framework to get to actually execute what we have to do. Why the policies are more or less stated, prescriptive and addresses the why. The policy frameworks, on the other hand, translates these policies to actionable strategies. What do we have to do? What should we do? That is how it's broader in scope and describes what every aspect of everybody involved should do. It's kind of broader. That's why it addresses the what and the how. Now, in proposing a framework on mangrove biodiversity conservation and protection, we ask, why the mangrove? And the answer is, why not the mangrove? I mean, it's obvious. It's a natural resource. It's a wonderful natural resource that is that encompasses everything in one. Wealth, natural wealth is the mangrove. You have the environmental benefits and the economic benefits side by side. With all this, small wonder why we need a particular framework for mangrove protection. Then we also have to address the what and the how of our policy framework. In addressing the what, we look at existing policies that are related to the mangrove protection and conservation in the Niger Delta region. In doing that, we look at the Niger Delta Region Climate Change Program and Action Plan. We did that in 2022, where most of our activities were in line with conservation of the mangrove and forest and environmental sustainability generally in the Niger Delta region. They were either short-term, they were either medium-term, they were periodic and some continuous. But all these strategies, all these activities, programs and initiatives were in line with environmental sustainability, inclusive of the mangrove. Although the last phrase there is development of mangrove parks, which is a medium-term work, but all this, the reclamation and rehabilitation of degraded ecosystems are inclusive of the mangrove in the Niger Delta region, the mangrove forest in the Niger Delta region. No, let's see that.
You have 4 minutes more.
Okay,
4
so
minutes more.
our Environment Award project. This was a project approved during the 4th Niger Delta Council in Port Harcourt, where we can use our environment to create wealth. That is what it was all about, and everything and what it translates to. With the environment, we can develop a community-based agroforestry, and biotrade. It's a continuous project. The climate smart agriculture, is a continuous project. So what our environment, our web project does is to handle all this, which is also in the Niger Delta Action Plan. Now, there are new innovations that we want to embark on. Because the mangroves is seen as a natural resource, we need to do carbon sequestration to gain all what we can from that mangrove. We have carbon sequestration when it comes to the soil. Sorry for that. That's a typographical error. Sequestration of the soil organic carbon. Doing that, we know how to sequester. Right now, we know that's something called carbon credits that are being awarded to countries that can harness carbon at a very, very large quantity. So once we start doing that in the Niger Delta region with the mangrove we have, despite the degradation, we can harness our carbon capture. We can harness our carbon in our soil and in the mangrove as a whole. There's a technology involved in that. These are enhancement opportunities to buffer the policies on mangrove. Because if we don't have these new policies, how do we protect it? If we don't have these new opportunities, how do we protect it in the first place? So these new opportunities can help us develop that framework in protecting our mangrove. Then the resource management tool is another enhancement opportunity. With this tool, we can now decide how to balance the harvesting of the mangrove and regulate the harvesting of the mangrove. When that is done, we're using this tool, a quadrant tool. You can say, oh, this mangrove in this section belongs here. And it belongs where it is renewable. Mangrove is a renewable natural resource. So we place it and know when it's undergoing degradation and when we should regulate the harvesting. We use a tool for that. So this is how we use this tool. But it has to be practicalized. But we have challenges in developing this framework. We can't do it on our own. In doing this framework, we can't do it on our own. So most of the factors affecting the development of this framework are based on the absence of collaboration between the Ministry of Niger Delta Development and other stakeholders. We are not seeing any collaboration. We are just on our own. And yet we are the host communities, is within our jurisdiction, and yet we are not felt. We are, despite being host to this wonderful natural resource, we are absent in key bodies like the NCCC. We are not there. High Prep, we are not there. And yet everything is happening in our own, in the Niger Delta region, and yet we are not there. So there's, we don't have funding partners. We can't do it on our own. There's a budget constraints, and there's a shift of focus from environmental sustainability to infrastructure development. Everybody wants to build house. Everybody wants to do this. I talked about the coast, the road being developed, and that is affecting everything. So, in conclusion, what do? We need a collaborative and inclusive framework design for the execution of management practices towards the sustainability of mangrove forests in the Niger Delta for effective resource utilization towards the development of the Niger Delta region. Thank you.
Would go straight immediately right away to join. Okay, he's waiting to join us. So let me introduce again from the Department of Zoology, University of Cambridge, Global Mangrove Alliance. The presenting right away is Dr. Thomas Worthington.
Well, thank you. I'm really delighted for the invitation to speak to you all today. I apologize for not being there in person, but as part of my role in the Global Mangrove Alliance, I'm going to give you an overview of what the Alliance is aiming to achieve, but also then try and link some of the work of the GMA to opportunities to collaborate on large-scale mangrove protection, conservation and restoration. So in my 10 minutes, I'm going to try and cover two topics. I'll give an overview of the structure of the GMA and highlight the recently launched Mangrove Breakthrough. And then if I have time, I'll give a brief overview of one of our data platforms that I think will kind of tie into the next session and that can help directly support mangrove conservation and restoration. Just as a really short background about me, I'm a senior research associate at the University of Cambridge, where I'm based in a collaborative centre with several large NGOs such as IUCN and the British Trust for Ornithology, called the Cambridge Conservation Initiative. I work very closely with the Nature Conservancy, and our research is really focused on quantifying the biodiversity value of coastal wetlands, including mangroves and salt marshes, but also trying to quantify their value to people. So moving on to the GMA, it's a collaboration that is seeking to bring together NGOs, governments, scientists, industries, and local communities around a common goal of conserving and restoring mangrove ecosystems. And I'll talk about our specific goals in the next couple of slides. It was launched at the World Ocean Summit in 2018 and brought together 5 of the world's largest conservation NGOs. The Nature Conservancy, WWF, IUCN, Wetlands International, and Conservation International. Since then, in the last 6 years, it's grown dramatically. We now have 80 different members across NGOs, research organizations, and universities, all with this aim of collaborating around increasing mangrove area and conserving what we have left and restoring those areas that have been degraded. As I highlighted, in the last couple of years, the GMA has updated its conservation and restoration goals, and I'll just go into a little bit of detail about those. The goal 1 is around halting loss, and that's specifically focusing on human-driven losses. And we heard from Dr. Lola Fatoyinbo at the beginning, around 60% of mangrove losses at a global scale are really driven by anthropogenic activities. Our target and the target across the partnership and with lots of other collaborating organizations is to try and reduce those losses to 0 by 2030. And we estimate that that will save in the region of hundreds to maybe thousands of square kilometers of mangroves by 2030. The second goal is focused around mangrove protection in protected areas. At a global scale, mangroves are actually relatively well protected. 42% of the global mangrove area is within recognized protected areas. That's considerably more than many ecosystems, but obviously there's differences between different countries, with some areas having very low protected area coverage and others having very high. So Bangladesh, for example, having a large proportion of its mangrove area within protected areas. The goal 2 is to double this protection from 40 to 80% at a global scale, but also focusing on making sure that protection is leading to the sustainable management and use of mangroves, both for biodiversity, but also for local communities and ecosystem services. And the final goal, which was part of the work that I led here at the University of Cambridge, is around the idea of restoring half of recent loss. We've identified that there has been about 12,000 square kilometers of mangrove loss since 1996, of which we estimated about 8,000 square kilometers are biophysically restorable. And this goal is seeking to restore half of that by 2030. And now this is not just across the GMA partnership, but across the partnership of projects and organizations working at a global scale. And I looked at the statistics on this for Nigeria. Nigeria has the largest potential area in Africa and the 8th largest at a global scale. The way the GMA works and the way that members engage is through a series of working groups, which in turn support their implementation and national chapters work. I'm going to go into a bit of detail about a few of these and then come back to science in a minute. So the policy working group aims to establish enabling conditions to support mangrove conservation and restoration at both international and national levels, advocating to create conducive policy frameworks to benefit mangrove ecosystems. We have a membership working group that is looking at bringing on new members. So if anyone in the audience is interested in joining the GMA, please do reach out to me. I can put you in touch with the membership secretary. And then we have a communication group that aims to promote the importance and awareness of mangroves, both within the network, but also globally. And finally, these all feed into our national chapters and implementation. And this is really where they provide the link to our global initiatives to on-the-ground implementation. To date, there have been 10 national chapters established, shown in that green panel to the left. As you'll see, it's been really focused on the Americas and Southeast Asia. However, based on the number of streams of work, the West and Central Africa is becoming a focus area. The national chapters are a self-organized collaboration of country-level stakeholders who themselves identify national priorities and see how these link to GMA goals. And the aim is that from the global level, in terms of science and policy, we aim to provide support to the national chapters in terms of their important sign questions, but also things around policy. I want to briefly touch on the Mangrove Breakthrough. This is a new initiative that the GMA helped form and endorse, which is a collaborative framework to secure the future of the world's mangrove ecosystems, with the aim to accelerate action investment from governments, the private sector, and non-state actors. It was launched in the UNFCCC COP in 2027 in Sharm el-Sheikh, led by the United Nations high-level climate champions and the GMA. And by the last COP in Dubai in COP28, it had formal agreements with 27 governments and a partnership between the Mangrove Action for Climate, which is also endorsed by a further 23 countries. So these big initiatives are really covering around 60% of the world's mangroves. Similar to the GMA, the Mangrove Breakthrough has 4 key goals. You'll notice that the first 3 are the same as the GMA's goals, with a 4th goal around sustainable finance. An initial work to cost, how much this would cost to achieve all these different goals, is estimated to be about $4 billion by 2030. I'm going to finish on talking about the Science Working Group. This is a group that I co-lead with Dr. Chris Brown at the University of Tasmania. Our aim is to create a network of mangrove scientists collaborating on research, focusing on conservation and restoration of mangrove ecosystems. We're a totally open group, so if there's anyone in the audience who would like to join the GMA Science Group, please do reach out to me. I can add you to all our mailing lists and encourage you to be part of the working group. We help the GMA through helping to develop some of the actions, but also the targets. We also develop science-led tools to support the planning and implementation of the GMA goals. And for the last part of the talk, I'll outline some of these tools and hopefully highlight opportunities for further collaboration. So what have we done as the GMA? Well, hopefully you've seen in 2021 and 2022, we produced the State of the World's Mangroves, which really tried to look at the state of knowledge of mangroves at the global scale. The 2024 version will be released in I think about a week's time in line with World Mangrove Day. But we've also developed several web-based tools that aim to put the planning and implementation of conservation actions in the hands of decision makers and those organizations doing on-the-ground implementation. So first of all is the Global Mangrove Watch portal, which is a geospatial data set platform, which I will hopefully get a chance to show you in a minute, which has the best quality data at a global scale for mangrove ecosystems. We developed restoration guidelines, which I'll touch on in a minute. And to look at how we can monitor restoration through time, we developed the Mangrove Restoration Track tool. For those interested in the restoration guidelines, they're an attempt to help discuss the successful implementation of mangrove restoration globally, providing guidance on best practices on physical restoration. For anyone who's interested in downloading the guidance, and I will share these slides after the presentation, please scan the QR code and it will take you directly to the guidelines, and they were developed in collaboration with the Blue Carbon Initiative and were led by the University of Queensland, Conservation International, and Wetlands International. I'm just going to finish by giving a quick overview of our data platform. Hopefully the screen has now changed and you can see this. This is where we have put a lot of the data we help collaborate on mangrove ecosystems, and this is work led by a number of partners, including Lola Fatimba at NASA, where we try and put together the best spatial data on mangroves. So when you launch the portal, what you can see is the geospatial data on the extent of mangroves. And down the left-hand side, you have a number of different data, what we call widgets, that look like little cards, that give you information on different aspects of mangrove ecosystems. So the one I'm showing currently is the mangrove habitat extent, and you can turn this on and off with the toggling of the button. But what's probably more interesting in a national context is you can select individual countries. So if I click on Nigeria, what you'll see is the data then redraws just for Nigeria, and the statistics are recalculated at that scale. One of our newer data sets is around alerts for more recent mangrove change called the Mangrove Alert Layer, which will hopefully draw in a second. And these areas are highlighting, based on satellite imagery, areas of new deforestation. And so they allow us to almost real time, within a few months, identify areas of recent change. I don't have time to go into the whole detail. The GMA does provide courses on the Global Mangrove Watch platform, but there is a huge wealth of information, and I'd be happy to talk to people about, areas for collaboration on what data is available. We have information on restoration and conservation, ecosystem services in terms of carbon, and soon to have fisheries, and data on climate and policy. I think I'm probably coming to the end of my 10 minutes, so I will stop there and say thank you very much again for the invitation to speak to you today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Thomas. Thanks for also managing your time well. I don't know, at this point, should we take one or two interventions, or we go straight? The hands are popping up. They won't even allow me to land. So I have 1, 2, 3 hands up. Can we just keep it to that? So all the presenters kindly get ready to respond to this questions or interventions, as the case may be. I'll go in this order, starting with, starting from my right here, and then we go this way. So please let me see you again so that we're sure. 1, 2, a presenter wants to now intervene and query another presenter. 3 and 4, simply because it's a woman. Okay, so we've expanded it to 4 numbers now, 4 interventionists. Okay, so we'll have you, sir.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Kenneth Akpan from Oxfam. Thank you, presenters. My questions goes to the Niger Delta presenter and also the last presenter. Yes, as an international platform, that is the Global Mangrove Alliance, from the presentation so far, we understand how soil changes impact the regeneration or the growth of mangrove. So my ask is, the multinationals, for example, Shell, who have been involved in oil spillage over the years, and we know this has impacted so much on the ecosystem and the degradation of soil and nature in the Niger Delta, particularly in the mangrove. What can you do using your platform and strengths to see that they are brought into account? Because recently in Nigeria, as of yesterday, they are trying to conclude a deal to sell off their onshore assets. And the concern now is for Niger Delta, were you involved in the selling of these assets? Whoever is taking up the responsibility of buying up these assets, are they also buying the liabilities of Shell to, pay, restore those, those degradation they have done over the years? The Niger Delta is almost sounding like beggarly, but I think as government institutions, their legs and that should be on the ground. How is your approach? You made mention that you don't have funds and all of that. How are you working with the people who are the true beneficiaries of all of this to put them in the front to see how you can make these demands? Because in the end, it is the people that suffer and matter. How can you use your global platform to impact and to pressure the global outfits like Shell to do the needful? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That question is directed at the Niger Delta and Yes, and Global Mangrove Alliance. Okay, let's take the second. Yes, second one. We'll take that round first.
Hello, my name is Ebuka. Nice to see you again, Tom. I think we had a meeting in Edinburgh some years ago. My question to you, I have questions. I have 3 questions to 3 of the speakers. My question to you, Tom, is one of the goals, which is to double the protection. My question is, under what platform would you be registered for that to count? As we know, there are different platforms like the Ramsar. So if something is going to be counted as a restoration or a conservation project to be counted by Global Mangrove Alliance, under what platform should that be registered, or could it be any project that is termed a protection project be added to that? So I'm sure that there must be an official platform for that. So that's my question to you. I will try and apply it to the science working group because I'm definitely interested in that. My other question is linked for both Dr. Joseph Onoja and Christabel, and it has to do with the relationship between local community bylaws and state bylaws and policies. My other organization called West Africa Blue, we usually try and go into the communities to start that conversation because as Mr. Kenneth said in his question, these are the people that are going to be beneficiaries to whatever project is being done. So what is the best way of tying that local community bylaws with the state bylaws? Again, because Christopher mentioned there is some disjointed communication going on, but you would assume that in such situation, an organization would have a representative in the community to both impact the policy that is being made and also have that bridge that communication gap. So what would you suggest would be the best way to tie in those policies that are being made by the state government or the federal government to the local communities? Because if it carries on being disjointed, then you won't have a focused goal in action. Again, questions to both Dr. Joseph and Christabel. Thank you.
Excuse me. I was thinking we should unpack those first and then we come back to the last 2. So who wants to bail the cat? Dr. Thomas, and then we'll come to Christabel. Dr. Thomas, over to you.
Okay, I'll try and answer both questions relatively quickly. So as I said, for the science working group, please do contact me. Everybody is welcome. In terms of when we think of protection and doubling protection, that's not going to be possible for all countries. Some countries are already at very high level of protection. We're thinking about all forms of protection. So that may be other effective area-based conservation measures or OECMs, or including traditional protected areas. So it's not limiting to any one form of protection. But also when thinking about that protection, it would also be that the sustainable finance and support for those protected areas. In terms about stopping degradation, the first question in the Niger Delta, I probably won't talk to the context specifically, but I think one of the key points is that when we think about mangroves, there's a lot of interest in restoration, but as kind of implied by the question, I think the key thing is protecting what we have so far. We've seen from a number of pieces of work that even through restoration, it takes a long time to get back to the biodiversity and ecosystem services, particularly things like carbon, can take hundreds of years to reform to historic levels. So really, I think making sure that long-term protection of existing mangroves is really key. In terms of what the GMA can do, I think by producing the data and the reports, we can help highlight the importance of mangroves at a global scale. So I'll pass over to the other speakers. Thank you.
In response to your question as in regards to community engagement, in our projects in Niger Delta, our environmental projects, there's always something called the BOQ, the Bill of Quantities, that the contractor has to stick to. And part of that BOQ, there's a portion there for community engagement. It's key. It's always awarded a vote line. It's always awarded a price to it. There's a price tag to it. So every contractor that carries out an environmental project in the Niger Delta region has to engage the community. And you have to have proof of engaging the community. You have to go to the community first before you even embark on that project. So community engagement is sacrosanct in our projects, in delivering of our projects, in carrying out of our projects in the Niger Delta region. Two, we were never involved in the first place. That's why I highlighted that the Niger Delta has not been carried along in most of the cleanups and everything going on in the Niger Delta region. We've been carrying out our own projects, we've been carrying out our own cleanups, bioremediation, and other things. But in high prep, and we've not been involved. They've been doing their thing without our own collaboration. And it's our community. It's my people. I know how to reach them. I know where to reach them. And yet you don't involve me. So we've not been involved. So that's why I'm highlighting it here. You know? And in terms of the soil or what they are doing, I was of the opinion of a research on the soil nutrients that facilitates both the mangrove soil and the Niper palm. Once we undergo a research on that, we know what does this have that this doesn't have. It's high scientific research, but we need to start somewhere and do that, because when we were doing pollution control, there are plants that can survive in oil polluted areas. They can soak up the oil for you. It takes a long time, but if we do that, it's a natural way of bioremediation. But that's just by the way. And in answer to the laws, first of all, laws are more or less, don't do this, don't go there. They are more or less prohibiting you to do this or do that. But when you come to policies, it has to be inclusive. So we need a bottom-up approach. We start from the community, then we go to the states. The Niger Delta is resident in the states, the 9 states of the Niger Delta region. The Niger Delta Development Ministry, we're in the 9 states of the Niger Delta. So we always have, from us here at the headquarters, to the states, to the community. In the same way, communities have made their requests, their what they want to do, as from the community, the locals, to the states, then to the federal government, that's to the topmost body. That's how we've been communicating since. But like I said, we still need a lot of collaboration. We can't do it on our own. Thank you.
Yeah, if I will add to that, when you talk about community bylaws and the states, so that there will be synergy. You see, Bayelsa State, as a case study, has different landscape and different habitat type. So if Bayelsa State is going to come up with a policy about its environment, it will be kind of a general policy or bylaws. It will be a general one. Now the community one is going to be like focused. And that is why there shouldn't be any conflict between the community and the state. So the community will be a microcosm of the larger what the state is going to do. So the community laws feeds into that. And then the added advantage is that there is ownership. That is the key word, ownership of that process. Because if you impose a law on some people, the tendency to rebel against it is higher than if they acclaim it by themselves. Then they are able to bound themselves to enforce it by themselves and hold themselves accountable. So I don't see any tension, that there should be any tension between the local and the state here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph Onoja.
Yeah, thank you for that answer. That was very helpful.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll take the last round of two people. Please go ahead, sir.
The topic is on policy.
Kindly introduce yourself, sir.
All right. I'm Dr. Moses Tanibari of River State Ministry of Environment. The papers presented centered on policies. My question is, what federal, state policies, which federal are supposed to be implemented at the state level? Is it the federal or is it the states? Well, this has caused a lot of conflict. Big conflict. When federal will come and say, I'm the papa. State will say, no, I am the mama that born you. So we're talking about policies here. Let's be very frank to ourselves. I think the next session, more of that will be discussed. Because this policy issue should be well defined. Who is to implement this policy at this local state level that will make the local government people to also be part of that system? Now, Niger Delta, talking about here, Minister of Niger Delta Affairs. I love our presentation, but there are some conservation and reservation. The ministry is not too felt in the Niger states compared to what NDDC is doing. So most cases is the NDDC we hear. NDDC we hear. But the policy makers, which is the ministry, they are not coming down to the states. I'm referring to you. Ask me the ministry, the Nigerian states, do they have real laws that will help them implement some of these things? That's the essence of that ministry. For this is the Nigerian data. In fact, I observed that the last administration, most of their projects, I'm not on Nigeria, but the Federal Minister of Works project, do not come to Nigeria area. Because they believe that there's Nigeria Minister of Nigeria data. There's also what? NDDC. So the ministry should come closer to the people and make them to see that policies are done and are implemented. That's one. Two, my brother talk about divestment now. Yeah. Shell is selling. In fact, Oando must have taken over Aji by now. What is the local context in that divestment? I must be frank to this forum. Total has effective local content. That's why they have less problem. Total Energies, formerly called F and whatever. So if the local people are not part of it, by the time you come as a stranger, they'll see you as a stranger. So the implementation of the policies should not be at the federal level. Should not be bringing order from the federal to the state. Rather, ask the state, what have you done? What do we need to help you to so that this thing is done? Not when you come to the state, you want to say, yeah, Doga. That's why I like my former governor, Wiki, you know him now. I don't agree. So these are things I think we should look into to see that this is effectively implemented. Like we're talking about mangrove here now. How many states have mangrove policy? This is the work of the Niger Delta Ministry, so that the Nigerian states have these things in place. Then help them, enable them to implement it.
Thank you.
Thank you,
sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you for that intervention. So we take the last contribution or intervention. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you, the organizers of the program, the Stakeholders Democracy Network, and the USAID. My name is Edidio Eyodo from the Department of Climate Change, Federal Ministry of Environment. I know that one of the objectives of this program was for us to collaborate together, partnership, and then share our knowledge and take it from there, and also to build how can we put an action to what is happening, especially in line with the mangrove. I know the first session of this presentation was on bringing us to limelight what is really happening. That's to my personal knowledge. And then the second aspect, building together the frameworks, the policy. What are the policy online? And what I'm saying here, speaking to what is happening, is that there are fragments of policies here and there within the state. And I'm still akin to what the National Conservation CEO said, and then my colleague also that has just finished speaking now. So there is something, there is a gap. There's a serious, very wider gap, because whatever you are going to, I am speaking that in terms of there is a need, is going to be for and against, that there is a need for this program to be able to harness the knowledge here. There should be probably a unified policy, bring it, because we are speaking to the Bayelsa and the River State region, but there are other states that are also having the mangrove. It's not just that aspect, which are not in the room. So every stakeholder should be brought in. We are not even speaking into the sensitization and awareness aspect of what this entails. We are just talking about, oh, this is the plan we have, and is not upscaling to what needs to be done, because from the discussion, from the presentation that we have here, is quite scary, and it's quite alarming from what is happening. So I think from this discussion, they should be aware of having, from the national, from other states, from a bigger room of engagement for a policy development, just a national, and then taking it down for the engagement, whatever the ownership is. Just they've talked about ownership, but I know that everything happens in the environment, and then we talked about the environment as a whole. So I want to see that from this discussion, there should be a national development, calling every stakeholders into the room to have like a national policy, if that's agreed. Just that's my own take on this. Thank you as we go on.
Thank you very much, Ma. Yes, I think the notes are being taken, and that is well appreciated. We won't be able to take other interventions at this point in time, because again, the time we thought we saved, we have spent.